Hello, all. Today we're going to talk a little bit about bipolar and bipolar-related disorders. So included in that will be bipolar disorder 1, bipolar disorder 2, cyclothymic disorder, substance medication-induced disorders, bipolar disorders, and other bipolar disorders. So I'm going to go ahead and just share my screen. Hold on. Okay. So we're going to talk about these disorders generally, but also the characteristics of these disorders. So all bipolar disorders are characterized by a manic episode or a hypomanic episode and a major depressive episode. So, and we have, and I'll talk about what all of those symptoms that are included in manic episodes, hypomanic episodes, and episodes and depressive episodes. And then we have bipolar. So the different types of disorders include, as I mentioned before, bipolar 1, bipolar 2, cyclothymic disorder, substance or medication-induced bipolar disorder, and then other unspecified bipolar disorder. So what is a manic episode? A manic episode is a distinct period of abnormally and persistently elevated, expansive, or irritable mood, lasting at least a week or any duration if hospitalization is necessary. So during the period of mood disturbance, 3 or more of the following symptoms have persisted. 4 if the mood is only irritable and have been present to a significant degree. So inflated self-esteem or grandiosity, a decreased need for sleep, so feeling rested after only 3 hours or so, being more talkative than usual or feeling pressured to keep talking, a flight of ideas or subjective experience that thoughts are racing, and distractibility, so attention too easily drawn to unimportant or irrelevant external stimuli. There's an increase in goal-directed activity, either socially at work or sexually, or psychomotor agitation. So lots of energy in the person. And so sometimes people, really enjoy their manic episodes because they feel energized and full of a charge. There's excessive involvement in pleasurable activities that have a high potential for painful consequences, such as engaging in unrestrained buying sprees, sexual indiscretions, or foolish business investments. And the symptoms do not meet the criteria for a mixed episode. So a mixed episode would be having the depressive symptoms as well as the manic symptoms. And the mood disturbance is sufficiently severe to cause marked impairment in occupational functioning or social activities or relationships with others, or to necessitate hospitalization to prevent harm to self or others, or there are psychotic features. So some of the ways that it could be harmful at work is, if someone is unable to attend work because they are following up on their grandiose idea that they want to become a record producer this week, and they've chosen to fly out to LA or something, or problems in their social life, for instance, with a partner, if maybe they're engaging in sexual behavior that is not sanctioned by the partner in the relationship, or maybe there's some excessive spending that's hurting the family finances. Something like that could be happening during a manic episode. So hypomanic episode is kind of like a manic episode, except a little bit more calm. So both require presence of at least 3 of the following symptoms during the mood disturbance, such as an inflated self-esteem or grandiosity, a decreased need for sleep, increased talkativeness or pressured speech, racing thoughts or flights of ideas, distractibility, increased goal-directed activity or psychomotor agitation. And so a lot of the symptoms are present in a hypomanic episode. They're present in a manic episode, but it's a less impaired version of a full-blown manic episode. So they're sleeping a little bit more. Maybe they have increased sexual activity, but only with their partner. Or they are goal-directed, but they're not engaging in grandiose ideas that could actually be harmful to their position. They're actually more productive, more creative. They're able to focus kind of the racing thoughts, whereas a manic episode might be, they're just so way up here that they can't really do anything with that energy. So individuals with hypomania do not experience the marked impairment in social or occupational functioning. They don't require hospitalization, and they do not display the psychotic symptoms that could be present in a manic episode. For a hypomanic episode to be diagnosed in a child or adolescent, the symptoms must exceed cultural and environmental expectations for that child or youth's developmental stage. So in a major depressive episode, depressed mood or a loss of interest. So with bipolar disorder, you might have this manic episode that lasts about a week, or a hypomanic episode, and then usually it's followed by a crash. Not always. Sometimes the person just levels out and then maybe they crash, or they have another manic episode and then they crash. But in some way, shape, or form, there has to be a major depressive episode in addition to the hypomanic or manic episode. So depressed mood, the characteristics of a major depressive episode include depressed mood or a loss of interest or pleasure in daily activities for more than 2 weeks. The mood represents a change from the person's baseline. There's impaired function, social, occupational, or educational. The specific symptoms, at least 5 out of the 9, are present nearly every day. So depressed mood or irritable, almost every day, indicated by a subjective report or observation made by others, appearing tearful or not being able to get up out of bed, something like that. Decreased interest or pleasure in most activities, most of each day. Significant weight change or change in appetite. Change in sleep. The person might become insomniac or hypersomniac. Change in activity, psychomotor agitation or retardation. So that means that they might either be sped up a little bit or have like bizarre movements, or they've slowed down. They're moving very slowly. Fatigue or loss of energy, guilt or worthlessness. So feelings of worthlessness or excessive or inappropriate guilt. Their concentration is diminished, so they're unable to concentrate or make decisions. They might feel suicidal. And it causes, significant clinical distress, and it's not caused by another medical condition or medication. So when you're diagnosing, a way to understand this is on a continuum. So, the more severe the mania, that might, include psychotic features, something like that. And severe issues when it comes to functioning in daily life. And then you have down the scale a little bit, hypomania, mild to moderate mania, the normal balanced mood, then we go down in mood, mild to moderate depression and severe depression. So the DSM-5 diagnostic classifications include bipolar 1 disorder. This is the classic bipolar disorder, and it means that one or more manic episodes or mixed manic episodes have occurred. Minor or major depressive episodes are often present. They may have psychotic symptoms. Specifiers include anxious distress, mixed features, rapid cycling, melancholic features, atypical features, mood congruent psychotic features. So those mood congruent psychotic features just means that their psychosis kind of matches how they're feeling. So maybe their grandiosity and delusions occur when they're in a manic episode, but they have some, on the depressive side, some delusions about their lack of self-worth. Then they have mood incongruent psychotic features, so it does not match the mood. Catatonia, meaning like they're unable to really move their body. They have rigid movements. Peripardium onset and seasonal pattern. So the severity ratings include mild, moderate, and severe. Bipolar 2 disorder is, again, going to be kind of like the less severe, at least on the manic side, because, the major depression can be pretty intense. So one or more major depressive episodes, one or more hypomanic episodes. So remember that less severe manic episode. And there are specifiers that you can add, such as anxious distress, mixed features, rapid cycling, melancholic features, atypical features, mood congruent psychotic features, mood incongruent psychotic features, catatonia, peripardium onset, and seasonal pattern, and severe ratings, mild, moderate, severe. And then we have cyclothymia. So cyclothymia lasts for at least 2 years, one in children and adolescents. And that just means that they have numerous periods with hypomanic symptoms that don't really meet the criteria for, I believe that's supposed to say manic. They're present at least half the time and not without for longer than 2 months. So, and then the criteria for major depressive manic or hypomanic episode have never been met. So this is going to be kind of like a less severe version of the bipolar disorder. However, it's happening more frequently. So the person has hypomanic symptoms, but they never quite reach a hypomanic episode. They have depressive symptoms, but they're not unable to get out of bed. It's the chronic, kind of all the time, amped up version of normal, on the scale of like normal to far severe. So that's something to keep in mind. And so DSM-5 diagnosis, diagnostic classification. So then we have unspecified bipolar and related disorders. So bipolar features that don't meet the criteria for any specific bipolar disorder. So maybe they have symptoms of all of these, but they don't quite fit a mold. And so this is for if you're working in a school. It has some kind of examples of what, mania might look like. So euphoria, irritability, and inflated self-esteem. So euphoria could be just acting really giddy and happy and silly and laughing about everything. And it's inappropriate to the external events. And it's not really fitting within the social context. Irritability, so they could be energized, angry, raging, or intensely irritable mood out of the blue is an appropriate reaction to external events. So in reaction to meeting a substitute teacher, a child flies into a violent 20-minute rage. And inflated self-esteem or grandiosity. So believing, talking, or acting as if he is considerably better at something or has special powers or abilities despite clear evidence to the contrary. So a child telling peers that they can fly on top of the school building. They might have a decreased need for sleep, increased speech, and flight of ideas or racing thoughts. So, the child is still zinged up even if they're not sleeping, or if they're sleeping in class, that could be an indication that something's going on. They might talk extremely loudly or more rapidly and cannot be interrupted by the teacher, or a teacher cannot follow a child's rambling speech that's out of character for the child. It's not related to a cognitive or language impairment a child might have. Distractibility, increase in goal-directed activity, or excessive involvement in pleasurable or dangerous activities. A child might be distracted by sounds in the hallway, which would typically not bother them. A child starts to rearrange the school library or clean everyone's desks, or plan to build an elaborate fort in the playground but never finish any of these projects. A previously mild-mannered child may write dirty notes to the children in class or attempt to jump out of a moving school bus. So here's a book by Patrick Jamieson, and this is a firsthand account of a teenager's experience with bipolar disorder. And so the person says, life feels like it's supercharged with possibility. Ordinary activities are extraordinary. I become the Energizer Bunny on a supercharger. Why does everyone else need so much sleep, I wonder? Hours pass like minutes, minutes like seconds. If I sleep, it is briefly, and I awake refreshed, thinking this is going to be the best day of my life. So as you can see, mania can feel really good to some people because they have all this energy and goal-directed activity, and they're seeking out pleasurable activities. Um, but they can also engage in reckless behavior that can really hurt their life, as well as the depression side of things coming into play. So what do major depressive symptoms look like in a school? It might look like the child, exhibits a depressed mood. So they might be down or flat or cranky or grouchy in class and on the playground. They may have diminished interest or pleasure in all activities. And so they might complain of feeling bored or finding nothing fun anymore. And a child reports feeling empty or bored and shows no interest in previously enjoyable school or peer activities. And they may have significant weight loss or gain or appetite increase or decrease. So they might look thinner or heavier, and they may have no appetite or an excessive appetite. They may experience insomnia or hypersomnia, psychomotor agitation or retardation, and fatigue or loss of energy. So sleeping in class, even though they got a good night's rest, being fidgety or unable to stay in their seat. And the speech or movement is sluggish, or they avoid physical activity. And the child looks or complains of constantly feeling tired, even with adequate sleep. They might experience low self-esteem, feelings of worthlessness, or excessive guilt. They may think or say more negative than positive things about self, or feel extremely bad about things that they have done or not done. So if they're saying things like, I can't do anything, I hate myself, they feel bad and dwell on accidentally bumping into someone in the corridor or not having said hello to a friend. And diminished ability to think or concentrate could be indecisiveness. So increased inattentiveness beyond the child's baseline attentional capacity, difficulty stringing thoughts together or making choices, and a child can't seem to focus in class, complete work, or choose unstructured activities. Hopelessness might be something that the child experiences, or suicidal thoughts or thoughts of death. So they don't feel like anything will ever change. And maybe they talk about wanting to be dead, not wanting to live anymore, wishing they'd never been born, writing a suicide note, or giving possessions away. And then we have the rapid cycling specifier. So this can be applied to bipolar 1 or 2, and it means that they have 4 or more mood episodes, including major depressive, manic, mixed, or hypomanic, every 12 months. So they just bounce in and out of these states, and they could occur in any order or combination, but must be demarcated by a period of full remission or switch to an episode of the opposite polarity. So this definition is different from what's used in some literature, where cycling refers to mood changes within an episode. So yeah, there can be a mixed episode where there's mood changes that occur within the episode, like irritability and anger can be a part of a manic episode, but anger and irritability can also be a part of a depressive episode. So possible consequences of the DSM-5. So it still does not address potential bipolar children and adolescents, and could miss bipolar in children and then prescribe medication that makes symptoms worse. And so there's still some inaccuracy with diagnosis, particularly with children. So I'm not going to read through these, but just take a moment to look at the alternative diagnoses that could, if it's starting to look like bipolar 1, there are some other diagnoses that could be possible. It's always good when you're diagnosing to think about differential diagnoses. What else could this be? That can help you narrow some things down. Yeah, so while some examples of ways students might behave in a school were provided, there are some other disabilities that, you could mistake, a child as having bipolar disorder, but actually they may have ADHD. So, just be mindful that there are lots of other disorders that could be the cause of some of these symptoms. And then you can also have coexisting disabilities. So you can have ADHD and bipolar disorder, having, mania, but also just your regular ADHD symptoms, which could be difficult to diagnose and to cope with, actually. So with bipolar disorder, you might have someone who's more talkative than usual with pressure to keep talking. But with ADHD, students can talk excessively. With distractibility, you can also be you can be distracted if you're in a manic episode, but you can also be distracted all the time if you have ADHD. And then there's an increase in goal-directed behavior, but ADHD kids are often on the go and act as if they're driven by a motor. So you want to look for the differences in mood. So ADHD, this might be kind of constant. With bipolar disorder, you're going to have those low lows in addition to maybe the hyperactivity and the on-the-go motor-driven kind of behavior. So psychoeducation, family interventions, multifamily psychoeducation groups, cognitive behavioral therapy, the Rainbow program, and interpersonal and social rhythm therapy are all good treatments, as well as schema-focused therapy. It's important to understand how the bipolar disorders can impact educational attainment. So it can be hard for kids to retain their grades. They might have learning disabilities. They might need some accommodations or tutoring. And, adolescent onset could bring on significant disruptions. So that could be, some good important things. So before onset, you might have some good work effort and academic strengths and college prep classes, but after onset, you could experience some difficulties in grades and graduating from high school. So some of the recommendations for school-based interventions would be, obviously tailored to the child. So you're going to want to have accommodations for that child, have positive relationships with people at the school. Medication management could be a big part of making sure that this child is successful. You want to help the child develop social skills, be prepared for intense episodes of intense emotion, and consider alternatives to the regular classroom. So that's all I have for bipolar disorders. I hope that was informational. Feel free to ask questions or refer back to the video if you needed help with anything, and have a great day.